Officer John Miller couldn't believe his eyes. His small office in the human embassy on Centauri Prime suddenly felt much smaller as the holographic display showed the unthinkable. "This is a direct broadcast from the Galactic Council chamber," said the monotone alien voice. "Witness the price of defiance." John's coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. On the screen, thousands of alien beings, the Nelvari, were lined up in massive formation. Their blue-skinned bodies trembled as Council enforcers pushed them forward. The species known as Nelvari has refused reasonable requests to access vital resources on their home planet. The announcer continued. The Council has voted. The punishment is death. John wanted to look away but couldn't. As a junior diplomat from Earth, he had been stationed on Centauri Prime for only 6 months. He had heard rumors about the Council's harsh methods. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The Nelvari looked almost human. If humans had blue skin, large eyes, and small ridges along their foreheads. John had read about them in briefings. They were peaceful. Their civilization was young. Their planet had only joined the galactic community 2 years ago. A high-ranking council member stepped forward on the broadcast. Let this serve as a reminder to all who would stand against galactic progress. The execution began. Row by row, the Nelvari fell as energy weapons fired. Men, women, children. The council made no distinction. The broadcast showed it all, complete with zoomed-in shots of faces frozen in terror. John stumbled to his bathroom and threw up. When he returned, the counter at the bottom of the screen showed the death toll rising. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. "This can't be happening," John whispered. But it was. And the worst part, none of the other alien representatives watching in the embassy lounge seemed shocked. Some nodded in approval. Others simply watched with cold, unblinking eyes. The final count stopped at 50,000. 50,000 lives ended to make a point about resource rights. John's hands shook as he accessed his secure terminal. Broadcasting Council proceedings off-world without permission was strictly forbidden. The penalty was severe, possibly death. But he couldn't stay silent. Computer, establish secure connection to Earth Defense Force Headquarters, Admiral Carter's office. Priority code Miller Alpha 79. The computer hummed. Connection established. Warning. Transmitting Council proceedings violates Regulation 15C of the Override. John snapped. Authorization code 47,265 Miller. He attached the broadcast footage and typed a short message. Admiral Carter, what you are about to see will shock you. The Galactic Council just executed 50,000 Nelvari in cold blood for refusing to allow mining on their homeworld. Earth needs to know what's happening here. This isn't the peaceful alliance we thought we joined. Just as he pressed send, his office door slid open. Senior Ambassador Lisa Green stood there, her face pale. "John, did you see?" "Yes," he interrupted. "And I just sent it to Earth." Her eyes widened. "You did what?" "That's against every protocol." "I don't care," John said, standing up straight. "Humans don't stand by while genocide happens." Lisa closed the door and lowered her voice. "The Council has called an emergency session. All member species are required to attend and affirm support for today's necessary action. They're calling it a regrettable but required step to maintain galactic order." John clenched his fists. "And if Earth refuses?" "Then we become targets too," Lisa said simply. "The Council doesn't tolerate dissent." John's secure terminal beeped. A message from Earth. Transmission received. Stand by for instructions. Maintain cover. Earth will respond. Admiral Carter. "What have I done?" John whispered. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder. "What any human would do. The question now is, what will Earth do against the combined might of 27 advanced alien civilizations?" John looked at the screen where cleanup crews were now disposing of Nelvari bodies. "Whatever it takes," he said quietly. Whatever it takes. Admiral Susan Carter stared at the screen in her office, her face growing paler with each passing second. The footage from Officer Miller played on, showing row after row of blue-skinned Nelvari falling to Council weapons. "Stop playback," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The images froze on screen. She reached for the intercom. "Get me the president. Now." Within the hour, every member of the United Earth government sat in the emergency council chamber. The room was silent as the footage played. Some officials covered their eyes. Others wept openly. President Richard Hayes stood when it ended, his hands shaking with rage. "This is why we kept our best technology secret," he said. "This is why we never fully trusted the Council." Admiral Carter nodded. "Officer Miller risked his life to send us this. The Council prohibits sharing their internal matters with home planets." Dr. Alan Wright, Earth's lead scientist on alien biology, raised his hand. "I studied the Nelvari. They're telepathic, completely peaceful. Their only crime was refusing to let the Council strip mine their world for rare minerals. The minerals power their faster-than-light drives," added General Kevin Foster. "The Nelvari offered to trade, but wouldn't allow the destructive mining techniques the Council wanted to use." President Hayes looked around the room. "Options. We could do nothing," said one official softly. "Like the other junior species in the Council, the Vorlax, the Tenari, they all just accept these methods. That's not who we are," Admiral Carter said firmly. "Humanity doesn't watch genocide and look away." The room fell silent again until Vice President Linda Porter spoke up. "We have our hidden fleet, the ships and weapons we never registered with the Council. 26 advanced battle cruisers," General Foster confirmed, "plus the defense systems we've built in secret." President Hayes walked to the window overlooking Washington, D.C., where one planet against 27 advanced species. "Not all Council species agree with these methods," Dr. Wright pointed out. "Many junior members fear the Council. They might stand with us." The president turned back to face the room. "All in favor of demanding justice from the Council?" Every hand went up. "Admiral Carter, you will represent Earth. Take 3 ships. Make them our registered ones, not the secret fleet. Deliver our message. Earth demands those responsible be brought to justice, or we withdraw from the Council." "And if they refuse?" Carter asked. "Then inform them that humanity is prepared to take action." After the meeting, Admiral Carter found Dr. Wright waiting outside. "I need everything you have on the Nelvari," she said, "and on the Council species." Dr. Wright handed her a datapad. "Already prepared. And there's more. More. There may be survivors. Council documents mention specimens being kept for research." Carter's expression hardened. "We'll find them." 3 days later, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Centauri Prime. 2 other Earth ships flanked her vessel. "Incoming transmission from Centauri Control," reported Communications Officer Frank Bennett. "They're demanding to know why we've arrived with military vessels." "Tell them Earth's representative requests an emergency council session," Carter replied. "They're granting permission to dock, but only 1 ship." Carter smiled grimly. "That's all I need." As she prepared to board the shuttle, General Foster approached her. "The secret fleet is on standby," he said quietly. 6 hours from here at maximum speed." Carter nodded. "Let's hope we don't need them." The shuttle descended toward the gleaming towers of the Council headquarters. Through the window, Carter watched alien ships moving through traffic lanes. So advanced, so powerful, and so cruel. "Humanity stands alone if we do this," her pilot said nervously. "No," Carter replied. "We stand for what's right. And I suspect we won't be alone for long." On the planet below, Officer John Miller received a coded message. "Prepare evidence. Earth has decided. Justice will be demanded." For the first time since watching the executions, John Miller smiled. Admiral Susan Carter walked into the Galactic Council chamber with her head held high. The massive room stretched before her, with rising tiers of seats filled with representatives from 27 alien species. The air felt cold. The silence was heavy. At the center of the chamber stood the Council's high table, where the 7 most powerful species sat. Council President Exlorith, a tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow, looked down at Carter. "The human representative may approach," Exlorith said, his voice echoing. Carter walked forward, her boots clicking on the polished floor. Officer John Miller stood to the side with other junior diplomats, his face showing both fear and pride. "Why have you requested this emergency session?" Exlorith asked. "And why have you arrived with military vessels?" Carter looked around the room. "I speak today for all of humanity. We have seen the broadcast of the execution of 50,000 Nelvari citizens." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others remained still as stone. "That was an internal council matter," Exlorith said coldly. "Junior species have no right to question council decisions." Carter stood taller. "Humanity questions any decision that leads to mass murder." The word murder caused the chamber to erupt in angry shouts. Exlorith raised all 4 of his hands for silence. "Be careful with your words, human." The Nelvari refused to comply with resource-sharing directives. The punishment was lawful. Carter pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing scenes from the execution. "Is this lawful? Killing children, slaughtering an entire population for refusing to let you destroy their world." "Turn that off," shouted Kivarn, another council leader. "Earth demands justice," Carter continued, her voice growing stronger. "Those responsible for ordering this genocide must be tried and punished. The surviving Nelvari must be released and compensated." Exlorith laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "And if we refuse, then Earth will withdraw from the Galactic Council immediately. We will take further action as necessary." The council leaders exchanged amused glances. "Further action," Exlorith said. "What could one small planet at the edge of the galaxy possibly do against our combined might?" Carter smiled slightly. "We hope it doesn't come to that. Earth prefers peace, but we will not stand by while innocent lives are taken." "You have no choice but to stand by," said Kavarn. "Your ships are registered. We know exactly what weapons and defenses you possess. You are no threat to us." Carter locked eyes with Exlorith. "You have 48 Earth hours to begin justice proceedings, or Earth withdraws from the Council." Exlorith's yellow eyes narrowed. "You may leave now, human. The Council will consider your request." Carter bowed stiffly and turned to go. As she passed Officer Millard, she whispered, "Begin Phase 2." Millard nodded slightly and slipped away. Back on her ship, Carter contacted Earth. "The ultimatum has been delivered, Mr. President." As expected, they dismissed our concerns. President Hayes appeared on screen. "And Officer Miller, already working on his part. We need the evidence he's gathering." "The fleet is ready," Hayes said. "Captain Harris reports all 17 ships are at full combat readiness." 17, Carter asked. "I thought we had 26. We've sent 9 to the Nelvari homeworld. If there are survivors hidden there, we'll find them." Carter nodded. "The Council has no idea what we're capable of. They think we're just another obedient junior species. When do you expect their answer?" "They won't even discuss it," Carter said. "To them, we're nothing, a minor annoyance." "Then it's time to show them exactly what humanity is," Hayes said grimly. "You have authorization to proceed with the full plan if they don't respond within the deadline." As Carter ended the transmission, her second-in-command approached. "Do you think they'll take us seriously, Admiral?" Carter looked out the viewport at the gleaming council buildings below. "They will soon enough, Commander. They will soon enough." Captain William Harris stood in the hidden shipyard orbiting Jupiter. Through the massive viewing window, he watched as engineers put the finishing touches on Earth's secret fleet. 26 advanced warships hung in space, their dark hulls absorbing the dim sunlight. "Beautiful, aren't they?" he said as Admiral Carter's hologram flickered beside him. "How soon can they be ready?" Carter asked from her ship near Centauri Prime. 17 are combat-ready now. The other 9 are already heading to Nelvary space. Carter nodded. The Council rejected our ultimatum. They called it amusing and suggested we should be grateful they allow humans to have any planets at all. Harris wasn't surprised. We've suspected for years that the Council sees us as nothing more than future servants or slaves. The evidence Officer Miller is gathering suggests we aren't the first species to be treated this way, Carter said. "Show me what we've been hiding from them." Harris smiled and pressed a button on his wrist device. A holographic display showed the details of Earth's secret weapons. Shield technology 3 generations beyond what we shared with the Council, Harris explained. Energy weapons that can cut through their strongest defenses. And this, he pointed to a small device, is our greatest advantage. What is it? We call it the Disruptor. It interferes with the Council's communication systems. They won't be able to coordinate their ships during battle. Carter's hologram showed her smiling slightly. And they have no idea we possess any of this. None. We've been careful. Every ship we registered with the Council has outdated technology. Everything they've seen from us has been exactly what they expected. A young species still learning the basics of space travel. Meanwhile, we've been preparing for this day, Carter said softly. Harris nodded. Ever since we found those abandoned ships on Mars 30 years ago and reverse-engineered their technology, we knew someday we might need to defend ourselves against whoever built them. And now we know who that was. The Council, Carter said. They've done this before. Found young species, stripped their resources, killed those who resisted. Harris looked at the ships again. Our fleet is ready when you give the word, Admiral. We need more than just military strength, Carter reminded him. Officer Miller is working on the other part of our plan. On Centauri Prime, John Miller moved through the lower levels of the Council archives. His security badge, altered by Earth intelligence, gave him access to records normally forbidden to junior species. "Find anything useful?" asked a voice behind him. Miller turned to see Zara, a blue-skinned Alorian whose 4 eyes blinked nervously. She was one of several Council workers who had secretly agreed to help humanity. "Records of 12 previous genocides," Miller whispered, holding up a data crystal. "The Council has been doing this for over 300 years. Zara's eyes darkened with sadness. "My people were nearly wiped out 2 centuries ago. Only our surrender saved us. There are others like you among the Council species, others who disagree with these methods." Zara nodded. "Many. But we are afraid. The Council does not forgive disobedience." "Earth isn't afraid," Miller said. "And we won't stand alone for long." "What do you mean?" Miller smiled grimly. "I've been contacting representatives from other junior species. 17 have already expressed interest in forming a coalition against the Council." "That would mean war," Zora said, her voice trembling. "Not if we're strong enough to prevent it," Miller replied. "The Council only respects strength. So we'll show them real strength, not just in weapons, but in justice." Zara hesitated, then handed Miller another data crystal. "These are the coordinates for the Nelvary research facilities. There are survivors, about 5,000. The Council keeps them for experiments." Miller's hand tightened around the crystal. "This is exactly what we needed. Thank you." As Miller carefully made his way back to the human embassy, he sent a coded message to Admiral Carter. "Evidence secured. Survivor locations confirmed. Coalition building has begun." The response came seconds later. "Well done. The fleet launches in 6 hours." Maria Rodriguez sat at the large round table in the secure meeting room of Earth's embassy on Centauri Prime. Around her were representatives from 17 different alien species. Each looked different. Some had scales, others fur. Some had multiple limbs or eyes. But they all shared the same expression, a mix of hope and fear. "We must be quick," Maria said. "The Council has spies everywhere." Krell, a reptilian vexer with golden scales, spoke first. "My people have suffered under Council rule for 2 centuries. We lost an entire continent to their mining operations. The Jorax took our ocean worlds," added Talia, a blue-skinned amphibian. "They called it resource redistribution, but it was theft." One by one, each representative shared their story. The Council had bullied, threatened, and attacked them all at some point. Some had lost thousands of lives. Others had lost precious resources or sacred lands. "Earth stands with you," Maria said firmly. "We have ships. We have weapons. What we need is unity." "What exactly does Earth propose?" asked Krell. Maria activated a hologram showing a document. "A coalition charter, equal protection for all member species, shared defense, fair trade, and most importantly, justice for crimes against sentient beings." "The Council will crush us," said one representative nervously. Maria smiled slightly. "They will try, but they don't know what we have." At that moment, Officer John Miller entered the room with Zora, the Elorian helper. He carried a data pad filled with evidence. "Records of 12 genocides," he announced, "plus the locations of 5,000 Nelvari survivors being held in research facilities." The room fell silent as the representatives processed this information. "The Council told everyone the Nelvari were completely eliminated," Talia said slowly. "This proves they lied." "They've been lying for centuries," Miller replied. "And now we have proof." Maria stood up. "Earth will move against the Council in 24 hours. We will demand justice for the Nelvari and all others who have suffered. Will your people stand with us?" One by one, the representatives nodded. "We must free the Nelvari survivors," Krell said. "It would be a powerful symbol." "Already in progress," Maria replied. Far from Centauri Prime, Lieutenant Daniel Jackson led a team of 12 humans in specialized stealth armor. They moved silently through the corridors of Research Facility 9, one of the secret labs where Nelvari survivors were being held. "Life signs ahead," whispered Sergeant Amy Nelson, checking her scanner. "About 30 Nelvari in this section." Jackson nodded. "Remember, they're telepathic. They'll sense our intentions before we even speak." The team reached a sealed door. Engineer Ben Cooper attached a small device to the lock panel. Seconds later, the door slid open. Inside, 30 Nelvari huddled together in small cells. Their blue skin was pale from lack of sunlight. Many had scars from experiments. When they saw the humans, they pressed back against the walls in fear. Jackson removed his helmet and held up empty hands. "We're from Earth. We're here to help you." One Nelvari stepped forward cautiously. His mind touched Jackson's, and Jackson felt a gentle probe of his thoughts. "You speak truth," the Nelvari said in a soft voice. "You feel anger at our treatment." "Yes," Jackson replied. "What the Council did was wrong. We're taking you somewhere safe." As the Nelvari were freed from their cells, one asked, "Why would humans risk themselves for us?" Amy Nelson answered simply, "Because it's the right thing to do." The Nelvari looked confused. The Council said humans were just another species they would eventually control. Jackson smiled grimly. The Council was wrong about many things. Back on Centauri Prime, Maria concluded the coalition meeting. All 17 species had agreed to stand with Earth. "Tomorrow," she told them, "the galaxy changes forever." As the representatives left, Officer Miller received a message from Lieutenant Jackson. "Nelvari rescue successful. Proceeding to other facilities." Miller smiled as he forwarded the message to Admiral Carter. The pieces were falling into place. General Paul Adams stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, the flagship of Earth's hidden fleet. Through the main view screen, he watched as ships from all 17 coalition species moved into formation alongside the human vessels. It was an impressive sight. Nearly 100 ships of different designs and sizes, all united against the Council's tyranny. Fleet status: Adams asked his second-in-command. "All ships report ready, General," replied Commander Olivia Parker. "Coalition vessels are in defensive positions as planned." Adams nodded. "Send the signal to Admiral Carter. We're in position." On Centauri Prime, Admiral Carter received the message while standing before the Galactic Council. The 48-hour deadline had passed with no response from the Council. Now she would show them humanity's true power. "The Council finds Earth's demands amusing," Xlorith was saying, his yellow eyes gleaming with contempt. "We suggest you return to your planet and be grateful we allow you to keep it." Carter smiled slightly. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Earth has made its decision." She tapped her wrist communicator. "General Adams, you may proceed." Xlorith laughed. "Are you calling for your little ships? We've already scanned them. Their weapons are no match for." His words stopped abruptly as alarms began to sound throughout the council chamber. A junior aide rushed to Xlorith and whispered urgently in his ear. Xlorith's yellow eyes widened in shock. "This is impossible." The main display in the chamber activated automatically, showing space around Centauri Prime. Where there had been only 3 Earth ships before, now there were dozens of vessels, human ships alongside alien craft from many worlds. "What is this?" demanded Kavarn, rising from his seat. "This," said Carter calmly, "is the coalition of free species. 17 worlds who have suffered under Council oppression have joined with Earth to demand justice." The Council members stared in disbelief at the fleet. The human ships were nothing like the ones they had registered with the Council. These were sleek, powerful warships with advanced technology that their sensors couldn't even properly analyze. "You deceived us," Xlorith hissed. "You hid your true capabilities." "Yes," Carter agreed simply, "just as you hid your true nature from us. We know about the 12 previous genocides. We know about the 5,000 Nelvari survivors you've kept for experiments. We know everything." The council chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. Xlorith slammed all 4 of his hands on the table for silence. "This changes nothing," he shouted. "Even with these ships, you cannot stand against the full might of the council fleet." Xlorith activated a communication panel. "This is Council President Xlorith. Launch all defense forces. Destroy the rebel ships." In space, hundreds of Council vessels began to move toward the coalition fleet. General Adams watched them come with calm determination. "They've taken the bait," he said. "Activate disruptors." Throughout the coalition fleet, small devices powered up, sending invisible waves of energy across space. On the Council ships, communication systems suddenly went silent. Navigation controls flickered and failed. Weapons systems showed error messages. "What's happening?" demanded a council commander as his ship's systems failed one by one. The coalition fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their first volleys were precisely targeted, disabling engines and weapons systems without destroying the council ships. Back in the council chamber, reports flooded in of ships dead in space, unable to fight or even communicate. "Impossible," whispered Kavarn. "Their technology is beyond anything we possess." Carter stood tall before the council. "We could destroy your ships. We could bombard your worlds. But unlike you, we don't believe in killing to make a point. Earth and the coalition demand only justice, not revenge." Xlorith's yellow eyes narrowed with hatred. "What exactly do you want?" "The council leadership will stand trial for genocide," Carter said firmly. "The Nelvari survivors will receive their planet back and reparations for their losses, and the coalition will be recognized as equal to the council in all galactic matters. And if we refuse," Carter gestured to the display showing disabled council ships, "I don't believe you are in a position to refuse." For the first time in 300 years, the Galactic Council faced something they had never expected, a force more powerful than themselves. Chief Justice Laura Wilson stood in the center of the Great Hall on Centauri Prime. Once the exclusive domain of the Galactic Council, The hall had been transformed into a courtroom. Representatives from over 50 species filled the observer seats. In the center, 7 council leaders sat in the defendant box, including Exilorith. "This trial will now begin," Lore announced, her voice carrying throughout the hall. "The coalition of free species versus the leadership of the Galactic Council. The charges are genocide, crimes against sentient beings, and abuse of power." 6 weeks had passed since the confrontation in space. The Council fleet remained disabled, held in orbit by coalition ships. The balance of power had shifted completely. Many Council species, seeing the evidence against their leaders, had joined the coalition or declared neutrality. "The prosecution may present its case," Laura said. Officer John Miller stepped forward. For months he had risked his life gathering evidence, and now he would present it to the galaxy. "I will show proof of 13 separate genocides ordered by these defendants," Miller began. "Starting with the most recent, the execution of the Nelvari." The main display activated, showing the footage that had started everything. Many in the hall turned away, unable to watch. Even some council species gasped at the brutality. 50,000 lives ended because they refused to allow destructive mining on their homeworld, Miller continued. But this was not the first time. For the next hour, Miller presented evidence of other massacres. The Brel, who lost 30,000 people. The Terran, nearly wiped out 2 centuries ago. The Zephians, whose entire civilization was destroyed. Exilorith stood suddenly. "This is outrageous. The Council has the right to control resources for the greater good." "Silence," Laura ordered. "You will have your chance to speak." Miller continued, showing records of Council meetings where the killings were planned. Documents with Exilorith's own signature ordering executions. Evidence that the Council had kept advanced technologies from junior species while demanding their resources. Finally, he called his most important witness. A door opened, and a Nelvari survivor named Ilara entered the hall. Her blue skin bore scars from Council experiments. She walked with difficulty but held her head high. "Tell us what happened to your people," Miller said gently. Ilara's soft voice filled the suddenly quiet hall. "We discovered rich minerals on our world. We were willing to share them, but not to allow methods that would poison our lands. The Council demanded we surrender everything. When we refused, they came with weapons." She described hiding as her family and friends were rounded up, how she was captured later and subjected to cruel tests in Council labs. "Why would they do this?" Miller asked. "They told us we were lesser beings," Ilara said, "that advanced species had the right to take what they wanted, that our lives were worthless compared to their progress." Throughout the hall, representatives from many worlds nodded in recognition. They had heard the same words. When the prosecution finished, the defense began. Council advocates argued that strong leadership was necessary for galactic stability, that resource management required difficult decisions. But their arguments fell flat against the evidence of deliberate cruelty and greed. After 3 days of testimony, the verdict came, guilty on all charges. Laura Wilson stood to deliver the sentence. "For crimes of genocide and abuse of power, the coalition could demand your lives, just as you took so many. But we choose a different path." The hall grew completely silent. "The 7 council leaders are sentenced to life imprisonment on a rehabilitation colony. You will help rebuild the worlds you damage. You will work alongside those you called lesser beings. Perhaps in time, you will learn what civilization truly means." As guards led the former leaders away, Exilorith stopped before Admiral Carter. "You should have killed us," he hissed. "That's what we would have done." Carter smiled slightly. "Yes, that's the difference between us." Outside the hall, crowds from dozens of species cheered the verdict. For the first time in centuries, justice had come to the galaxy. Officer Miller found Zora, the Elorian who had helped him gather evidence. "What happens now?" she asked. Miller looked up at the stars visible through Centauri Prime's clear dome. "Now we build something better." 1 year after the trial, Ambassador John Miller stood on a hillside overlooking the rebuilt Nelveri capital city. The blue-green buildings gleamed in the sunlight. In the streets below, Nelveri moved freely, their society healing slowly but surely. Where there had once been only death and silence, now there was life and hope. "It's beautiful," said Ilara, the Nelveri survivor who had testified at the trial. She had become an important leader among her people. "Your people have done amazing work," Miller replied. "Dr. Morgan's team only helped. The vision was all yours." Dr. Stephen Morgan joined them on the hillside. His team of human scientists and engineers had spent the past year helping the Nelveri survivors rebuild their civilization. They had shared technology, medicine, and farming techniques, but always followed the Nelveri's lead. "The new mineral extraction system is working perfectly," Morgan said. "You're getting all the resources you need without any damage to the environment." Ilara nodded. The council said this was impossible, that efficient mining required destroying the land. "They lied about many things," Miller said quietly. In the center of the Nelveri capital stood a memorial to the 50,000 who had been executed. Each name was written in glowing script that could be seen even at night. At the base, words in multiple languages promised, "Never again will such atrocities be tolerated in our galaxy." Miller's communication device chimed. "Ambassador Miller," he answered. "The Galactic Assembly session is about to begin," said Maria Rodriguez, now the head of Coalition Diplomatic Affairs. "President Hayes is asking for you." "On my way," Miller replied. He said goodbye to Ilara and Dr. Morgan, then boarded a shuttle to the orbital station. From there, a faster-than-light ship took him to Centauri Prime, now the headquarters of the new Galactic Assembly. The assembly hall bore little resemblance to the old council chamber. Instead of rising tiers with the most powerful species at the center, the new design featured a true circle. All representatives sat at equal height. All had equal voice. President Richard Hayes met Miller at the entrance, ready for the big announcement. Miller nodded. The people of Earth should be proud. None of this would have happened without humanity taking a stand. They entered the hall together. Representatives from 73 species filled the seats, the original 17 coalition members, plus many others who had joined over the past year. Hayes took the central podium. "1 year ago, our galaxy stood on the brink of war. Today, we celebrate peace and cooperation. The Galactic Assembly has now been ratified by 73 worlds, with more joining each month." Applause filled the hall. "Today we announce the completion of the Justice Initiative," Hayes continued. "The former council leaders have finished their first rehabilitation projects. 5 damaged worlds have been restored. Resources have been returned to their rightful owners." Miller looked around the hall. Among the representatives were many who had once feared the council: the Vexer, the Elorians, the Brel. Now they sat as equals with everyone else. "Our next announcement comes from the Nelveri," Hayes said, gesturing to Ilara, who had arrived separately. She stepped to the podium. "My people number only 5,000 now. Our road to recovery will be long. But today, we wish to share something with the galaxy." The main display activated, showing images of a glowing blue crystal. "This is Nelverin, the mineral the council wanted from our world. We have discovered it has properties that can enhance faster-than-light travel tenfold. We freely offer this discovery to all assembly worlds." Murmurs of amazement spread through the hall. "The council would have killed for this," someone whispered. "And that is why they never deserved it," Ilara replied. After the session, Miller stood at a viewport looking out at the stars. Admiral Carter joined him. "Thinking about how far we've come?" she asked. Miller nodded. "I still see them sometimes. The 50,000 Nelveri. In my dreams. Their deaths changed the galaxy," Carter said softly. "Because one human refused to look away. Because Earth refused to stand by. It wasn't just our military might that made the difference," Miller said. "It was our moral compass." Carter smiled. That's humanity's real contribution to the galaxy. Not our ships or weapons, but our belief that all life deserves respect and justice. Together, they watched as ships from dozens of worlds moved peacefully through space around Centauri Prime. A new era had begun.